Uh,
Hello,
Hello.
Nathan.
Hello. What's your name?
Hey, my name is Hamza.
Hamda?
Hamza.
What a wicked name.
Thanks, man. Where are you from?
England. Where are you from?
The same, England.
Okay. And your
What part
name
of England are you from?
is Indian?
My name is actually Arabic.
Oh, it's a nice name.
So your
What do you do,
name,
my
what's your
friend?
name?
Huh?
What's your name?
Nathan.
Oh, yeah, so I said your name, innit? So Nathan, what do you do for a living?
This is what I do for a living.
You make content.
Hmm.
What sort of content do you make?
I run a debate show on YouTube.
Oh, nice. What sort of topics do you like debating on?
Cosmology.
What exactly is cosmology?
Okay. So you're British, right?
Yeah.
So you believe in heliocentrism, which is the idea that we're on a ball. Yeah?
Yeah.
That's cosmology.
So you debate with flat earthers.
Yeah, sometimes.
And what's your thoughts on flat earth?
How do you mean, what's my thoughts on it?
Or do you think it's complete crap? Or do you think there's like they got some point?
No, it depends on what you mean by complete crap, which bit of it.
Like, do you think that it's not possible for the earth to be completely flat, like a pancake?
Well, that's how they measure it. So part of the globe cosmology is that to make a globe, you first got to measure the ground. And the way they
Right.
measure the ground is with angles. So you measure things like Polaris. Do you know on the maps you've got latitude and longitude?
Yeah.
Well, those are angle measurements to Polaris. Well, they're measured off a flat plane. And then what you do is you get the minimum for your British cosmology, you get the minimum angle to Polaris. So when Polaris reaches its minimum, that's the equator. It's just the minimum value you can measure Polaris with. Yeah, that's called the equatorial plane. That's what you measure latitude on. But it's actually measured on a plane. And then you take that measurement and convert it to the sphere, so you can project through the sphere onto a bigger sphere called the celestial sphere. And then what you can do with that is project that out onto a big cylinder and then cut the cylinder down the middle and roll it out flat. And that's called a Mercator projection. So part of the globe, I mean, everyone's entitled to their beliefs. You know, most of this country believe they're on a globe, which is fine, but most don't appreciate where the religion of the globe comes from, as in the measurements that are used to make the globe, which are flat. So that's why all the maps are flat. But there's a conversion process in between, and that process puts it on a globe and then projects it back out flat, so you can actually use it with the angles that you measure. So, like mariners, like out at sea with sextants, they're measuring a flat plane and an angle off the flat plane to the star. That's how you navigate, and that's how all the maps are made, like flat.
So did you study cosmology?
Well, I've studied celestial navigation. My sister used to own a boat, and over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been studying celestial navigation. But depends what comes our way. So I'm more reactive. So people come on my show, I'm ignorant, and they'll tell me, so I'll learn from
Yeah,
them.
you seem like a Joe Rogan type character.
I appreciate that. If I'll take it.
Like, you seem like inquisitive.
Inquisitive. Yeah, that's why I run the show. So I'm the host, and I encourage people to come on my show and tell
What's
me
your
what they
show
believe
called?
about the Earth.
What's your show called?
Flat Earth Debate.
Is it on YouTube? Flat Earth Debate.
My channel's called Nathan Oakley 1980.
Nathan Oakley 1980.
Yeah.
And how many subscribers do you have?
On that channel, 26,000, something like that.
It's pretty decent. How long have you been doing that?
This subject, about 10 years.
Oh, nice. So, like, have you been like on YouTube for 10 years then?
Now, I've been on YouTube for much longer than that. I first made YouTube videos in 2006 when it first, like, it was out for about 2 years, I suppose. YouTube was out 2005, 2004, I think, something like that. And about a year or two after it came out, I
Similar
started making
topic?
videos.
Was it the same topic, or were you doing different topics back then?
No, I was doing anything that could get success, and none of it did until I covered cosmology, and then started interviewing people about the flat Earth subject and how they'd found that subject and what they knew about it, and they started telling me. And then after a while, there was enough people coming in going, flat earthers are idiots. Now, the people who are staunch global religion, what would you call them? Fanatics. The people who are fanatical about being on a ball would come in and say, no, this is how we do measurements, and they go to things like curve calculators and things. But the same principle applies. So in a curve calculator, you've got a horizontal plane that you have to measure, and you have to get your height of your eye above it, surface level or sea level. So you get your height of eye, and then you can derive a curve that's below the surface level that you've measured with the calculations. So that's how it works. They convert the measurements of the flat plane to a sphere and say that you've got a horizon that's below the surface. So most people aren't aware that they've got a religion, though. If they're on a ball, their governments won't tell them they're on a ball. But it's Roman Catholic, came from the church. Copernicus.
So like, if the Earth was flat, surely you'd be able to see the entire world from the tallest building in the world.
We can. That's down to perspective, though, isn't it? So as stuff gets further away, it's going to get smaller.
Yeah.
But that effect, perspective, has been turned into what I don't know what your religion is, but if you're British, I assume you're a heliocentrist, as in you think you're on a ball. So for you think that as you raise in altitude, you can see further over the curve. Whereas in reality, when you raise in altitude, you widen your angle to the plane so you can see further. And the same with things getting smaller. So in globe rhetoric, you've got boats going over the edge, the horizon. So you've got boats that fall over the edge, and you say, oh, it's going over Earth curve. Well, that's a boat getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. That's perspective. But in the maths, they just take perspective and call it Earth curve with the effects. So they give you distances that don't change with size. So this is a while since I've done this, but so in the Earth curve maths, you've got a building, and it'll say this building is 100 stories or 100 feet, say. And then in the maths, it doesn't matter how far away the building gets, it always stays that value. So it's always 100 feet. So as it gets, let's say you've got a building that's 10 miles away and it's 100 feet, and then it's 1,000 miles away. Well, in the diagram, it's still 100 feet. So you can replace the fact that it gets smaller with distance in angular size with the claim that it's going over a hill. Yeah? So you just take the effect of perspective and call it Earth curve. That's how Earth curve maths works. But like I said earlier, the way you get to those maths is to derive the value from surface level. So in the maths itself, the first thing you have to put into Earth curve maths is how high you are above the surface level, which is sea level. Well, you've got to measure the surface level at sea level to get your height of eye in altitude, which is measured above surface level, which is all flat. So you calculate how high you are of a flat plane, and then say the difference from eye level to surface level is a line that meets the horizon, and then you can imply that that's a difference, or a dip calculation they call it, that represents a curve of the Earth. But the maths shows your head and the building at the same time. Whereas when you look at something and watch it get further away, it gets smaller. But when you look at things in side view for Earth curve religious maths, it's saying that perspective is Earth curve, basically. That's the long and short of it. Like I say, it's been a while since I've covered that. But I haven't spoken to any British people on here, so most of the people I speak to on here are either kids, girls that are looking for men that are sat with their boobs out, or guys that are the same, topless guys that are clearly just looking for women. Me, I'm just looking for YouTube material.
I'm just looking for a conversation. I've got some time on my hands. I do find a lot of the people on it are quite immature, though. So you haven't spoken to a British person on it?
You're the first, maybe the second British person. The other one I talked to in Manchester was a fisherman, and he told me about his fishing, which was quite interesting.
And have you got the filter on worldwide?
A filter?
Yeah, you could choose what country you got on there.
I don't know how to use the software. Maybe I just checked all. I was like all countries.
So before you were like doing like debates about cosmology, like what's your background? What were you doing before that?
Directly before that, I managed a pawnbroker. I hated it. I had to sell people like payday loans, and I refused to do it. Eventually, they wanted to get rid of me because of it, because I just knew it was putting people in crippling debt. So they'd come in, and they'd say, I need 200 quid, and I would take them through the actual process of application, and everyone would fail if you actually filled out the form correctly. You'd never pass, because if you need a payday loan, you haven't got any money, right? So therefore, when you go through the process, they'd fail, and the manager or owner, I was the manager, would come in and go, "You haven't sold this loan," and I'd give him the reason. He'd be like, "Well, you've got to fudge it to get them to have the loan." I'm like, "No," but they hated that. But pawnbroking was quite good fun, like buying stuff in from people, and sometimes they'd buy it back, sometimes you'd sell it, just retail it. That was quite good fun because you'd get all the new phones in. So people would buy a phone and then 10 days later realise they couldn't afford it and they'd pawn it. So you'd get the brand new iPhone or the brand new Samsung Galaxy or the brand new Nintendo or whatever it was that was brand new in electronics. Someone would be bringing it in the day it came out. And you'd be like, wow, look at that.
So like, do you make a lot? Like, is there good money in like? Well, basically, what you're doing now is content creation, isn't it?
Yeah. No, not for me, because the Americans about 5 years ago decided that the subject itself was too controversial for the mainstream public. So Congress had a meeting with YouTube themselves, and they said, "What are you going to do about these 9/11 conspiracy theorists? What are you going to do about the people who say Sandy Hook is a hoax? And what are you going to do about flat earthers?" And they went, "Oh, we'll censor all of them." So I was in that list because I'm running a debate on the subject. So suddenly it went from growth to dedicating my every waking hour and doing things like this to try and generate content to keep material coming out regularly just to keep the bills paid.
So who do you think was behind 9/11 then?
I don't know who has been behind 9/11. I have no interest in it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. So my main interest is, at the moment, talking about how Earth is measured, because there's so many people with a religious belief about it, especially in Britain. So you're my man, actually. You're the main man in this respect, because you're the General Joe that on the street would, as you did, go, "Well, is this flat Earth thing nonsense?" You're like, you are aware that till only a couple of 100 years ago, a lot of the continents were still navigating Earth flat. And it's only because of the Western world culture that they now don't, and now say that it's a globe, because that's the one world religion. Most people don't realise that heliocentrism from the Roman Catholic Church is the one world religion. But that's a fact that you can easily show people, and have, I don't know, various American politicians literally telling it to you. Yeah? That's the one world religion. But unifying everybody
You're
onto
a
a
Roman
globe...
Catholic.
Say again?
So you're a Roman Catholic.
No.
So what religion do you subscribe
I'm not a
to?
religion. But that's just the origins of the globe. There's lots of other cosmologies. So there's some people who think they're on a concave Earth. Some people think they're in a bleeding dish. Some people think they sit on this azimuthal equidistant pizza pie projection. There's all sorts of different beliefs, and I hear them all. But I just typically listen to what people tell me about what they know about their religion, and then pick it apart and see how valid it is. And normally you'll get to the bottom of most of them pretty quickly. But for your reference, all of them rely on measurements, and all of the measurements are flat. So in terms of what Earth actually is, well, you can only really rely on what it's measured as. And the inference that you're on a globe has its origins in those flat Earth measurements. So you've got to measure Earth flat to derive the globe to reify. Yeah? To have an idea that you're standing on a globe, you've got to measure Earth flat first to calculate that globe, if that makes sense.
Do you think the moon landing was real?
Definitely, I already know it isn't. That's a good question, because I suppose that's part of the... Yeah, that makes sense. That's part of the heliocentric religion, right? They're going out in rockets. So no, definitely not. You're breathing gas pressure. Well, gas pressure requires containment. That is to say, without a container, the gas that you're breathing would just dissipate into a sky vacuum instantly. You'd never actually have gas pressure on a globe Earth. If you take the measurements that are flat, calculate it into a globe model, and then pretend that you're standing on that model in a vacuum, then the gas that's on those pictures from NASA and shit, they've got high pressure gas, like clouds and stuff, next to a vacuum. Like the black bit they claim is a vacuum in those paintings of Earth from space. Well, the gas would just fill the vacuum instantly, because there's nothing to contain it. It's like a fart. You fart, it'll just dissipate into the room, because the gas fills space. Well, that's what would happen with all of it if the sky was a vacuum. So to answer your question, to get to the moon, by their story, you've got to go through high pressure gas, and then wave goodbye to it. So the gas just stops expanding at the Kármán line, and then they carry on past the high pressure gas that's stopped, and then go to the moon. And
So
then they
that
take some
moon landing,
pictures.
it was all done in a studio. It was all a hoax.
Say again?
So you think that moon landing that happened, I think, in the 1960s was a hoax?
It was a hoax. There's no doubt about it. So the footage is stop motion animation of the actual craft. I mean, I studied performing arts, and things like doing stop motion animation was part of the courses that I did when I was in college years and years and years ago. So for me, it was really obvious years and years and years ago that it was fake because it's stop motion animation. There's no craft. There's a backdrop with a model that they've animated frame by frame by frame. Just go and have a look at the moon landing footage. It's really glaringly obvious. Same for the backdrop. If you look at them on the moon, there's a backdrop. Again, I painted plenty of backdrops when I was in college, so I know what a backdrop is. But that's what they're using.
I don't think it was real, by the way. I think.
Well, it wasn't.
I don't think they had the technology back then to even be able to leave the go past the ozone layer.
Well, there you go, ozone layer. So if you imagine what they've told you they've done, they've taken a picture of a blue marble according to them.
Yeah.
Well, there's clouds. If you imagine that part of the blue marble, imagine there's a cloud there. What's this bit? It's a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum according to them. What do you think would happen to the cloud? It just go pshk.
Yeah,
It just
it
immediately
just
vanish,
disappeared.
and we'd all be like in Total Recall, going, dying of no gas because it had all buggered off into the vacuum.
Well, what do you think the reason that they hoaxed the moon landing was? What do you think was the motivation behind it?
I already told you, it's the one world religion. Keep you under control, like any religion. So back in the day before heliocentrism, it was Roman Catholicism and all of the other derivatives, Judaism, Islam. You've got all those derivatives that are designed to do the same thing, right? Keep people under control. Well, the newer derivative has come from the Roman Catholic Church with Kepler and Copernicus and basically lots of Roman Catholic priests. And they're charged with giving better accurate data about the sun. So you can derive things like elliptical orbits from the flat Earth measurements. So you measure the stars and you measure the angles and you track all their positional data with respect to their angles off a flat Earth. And you put that in a big book called the Ephemeris. And then with that data, that you can track the patterns, which is where we get our almanacs and things from, they tell us what the angles to the stars will be all year long for the navigators on the boats. Well, that data is what Copernicus can use to derive things like radial values from minimum elevations and turn them into a globe and then put the Earth in a motion around the sun, mathematically. So that's what the church did, so that they could better figure out when the epicycles and various different positional data of the stars would be, so they could better track when Easter would be. So they needed to know when Easter would be for the church, and it's based on the positions of the stars. Well, if they haven't got an accurate way of tracking where they'll be in a motion, they need a system to be able to say, this star will be in this position at this time, therefore Easter will be the following full moon. Now, if they haven't got that data, because they don't know how to track the positional information from the stars, they will employ a mathematician like Copernicus and say, give us a better way of modelling the movement of the stars. Well, that's where you get things like the globe Earth model and heliocentrism. It's a mathematical extrapolation from those original flat Earth angle measurements so that they can say, we think with this model, we better know where the stars will be at what time. Now, that doesn't mean you actually stood on the model they've created mathematically. It just means that the globe model's a pretty good way of modelling the stars to accurately work out where they might be at a given time. But it's got its problems. You know, the angles don't work off the surface, so you can't actually measure an angle on a globe. You can't get a straight line off it. So things like that they don't work, but they do work when you've converted it, and in the model you can predict where the stars will be in the sky at night. But that's about all it gives you, which is great. But they've used that to control people.
So where do you learn all of this?
Just on my show. People come onto my show and want to tell me how the world works. So, for instance, you get like a ship navigator, got a drunk old navigator called Johnny, who's Dutch or Danish, I forget which. And he'll come on and he'll basically tell us how he did celestial navigation. So he's using his sextant, he's making his circles of equal elevation, he's describing how he's measuring Earth flat to us and explaining how the principle works, and still does. And other people will come on and tell us how cartography works. So how did we get the latitude and longitude lines? How did these systems come to pass? How are they converted onto a sphere? Or you'll get the other end of the extreme, which is people who are believing they're on a ball, coming you and telling you how they're ball works in their mind. Now, typically when that happens, you just take them back in time to the original measurements of the Earth itself and how that turns into their model for them to believe they're standing on a sphere. Or a concave Earth, or whatever else people have turned the measurements flat that they are into in terms of shape.
But you believe that the Earth is a sphere?
No, it can't be. You measure it flat, it's flat. That's how it's measured.
So you believe it's flat?
Well, no, I just know that's how it's measured. There's no belief involved. It's just a measurement. So how we measure Earth is flat. Sea level, surface level, eye level, elevation, angle measurements, elevation in general. All of those things are with respect to a flat plane. That's how it's measured.
But the shape of the planet, what do you think the shape is?
Flat. That's how it's measured.
So it's completely flat, or it's like rocky, or do you think it's like a pizza? Like what sort of shape do you think it is?
Well, it's not necessarily a shape question. It's just an aspect. So flat, in terms of how you measure the Earth, is an aspect. Yeah. So it's not a shape. You can measure Earth as a flat plane, and you need to measure it as a flat plane. Or if you're building on it, for instance, you, in terms of surveying and building, you survey and build on Earth as a flat plane. Now, if you do any research as a Brit, the religion will lead you to certain references that suggest that it's okay to build on Earth flat, measure Earth flat, reference Earth flat, use Earth as a horizontal plane of reference, because it's a ball. But in this area, it's just a small little bit of flat Earth, so that's okay. That's the kind of thing you'll find. Or in navigation, they say, yeah, we are measuring and navigating a flat plane, but there's a dangling globe beneath the flat plane that we're measuring. It's a tangent. They'll give apologies for why it's not measured flat, not measured ball-shaped, because it isn't. So you have to make apologies and clever models and things that explain why it wouldn't need to be measured ball-shaped, because it isn't. It's measured flat. There's no curvature to the surface.
So really, there isn't really like an efficient way of measuring curvature.
Well, there isn't any. So the curvature suggestion is a derivation of measuring the surface level, which is flat, it's level, and then deriving a dip by calculating how much the point in the distance we call the horizon would be lower when you raise in altitude. And the way you do that is measure your eye level versus the surface level to calculate where a horizon would be below surface level, and that horizon below surface level is what they call Earth curve. But in a view that's side on, here's you, here's the target you're looking at in the maths. So you've got the side of your own head and the target, so there's no perspective. It's just a 100-foot building that never changes no matter how far it is. It's 10 miles away, 100 foot. 100 miles away, it's 100 foot. Million miles away, it's 100 foot. But in that way of presenting things, you can still draw a straight line between you and the target, and it will never change in size. It's 100 foot. Whereas in reality, you see things with angular resolution. Things get smaller as they get further away from you, right? Well, you can call that effect Earth curve, and they do. But to get there, you've got to measure Earth flat and derive surface level and eye level, which are parallel with each other, parallel planes. That's how the maths gives you an Earth curve. Clever, eh?
So what do you do when you're not talking cosmology? You got any hobbies?
I like to e-beg for money on YouTube because I'm poor. So I'll go, give me money. What do you do?
Oh, what do I do? I like shooting. I like riding motorbikes.
Oh, yeah? What kind of motorbike you got?
I've recently just bought a Mongrel.
A
I've got a
Mongrel?
CG125.
Okay.
I've got a Triumph, a Royal Enfield, a Classic 350, and a
Wow.
Bullet 500. Yeah,
Wow.
but I'm not old enough to get a full license in the UK.
Okay.
So I've just got a CBT, so I'm just waiting next year when I'm old enough to get a full license, and I'm probably going to buy a Bonneville 1200.
Okay. How old are you?
I'm 23.
How old you got to be to have a full license?
24.
You got to be
I could get
24
the
to have a
A
full
now,
mobile
but
license. Really?
you got to be, it's like age categories, but if I could do the A2 now, but there's no point because I'll only have it for a year and then I'll do the full license. So I've got a CBT, and then when I'm 24, I could get a license, but it's a restricted license. I can't get whatever bike I want.
No, you can 125 and under, innit? I did my CBT
Yes.
years ago, and from memory, you just have to have a certain amount of years under your belt with the CBT, and then you can do the full bike test, right? So it's not
No,
like
that's how it used to be.
well, so it's changed.
Yeah, now you can have a CB. The CBT only lasts 2 years, and you can only ride up to 125, and then you could either redo your CBT again, and then that lasts 2 years again, or you could get, depending on your age category, you could get the full direct access, which is you have to be 24 to do it, but that license is forever, and you can ride whatever bike you want.
And then you can
Or you
jump on
could
a
do an
Hayabusa.
A2. What's that?
Then you can jump on a Hayabusa.
Yeah, I'm planning on eventually getting Kawasaki Ninja H2R, which is like one of the fastest bikes you get.
My brother had a Ninja
Which one?
750.
You mean
Sound about
650?
right? Green one.
Yeah, it's probably a 6. I don't think they make a 750.
600.
Yeah, it's either a 600 or a 650. It's a good bike. The Ninja's a good bike.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I didn't ride it. I didn't have a license. Like I say, I never went past the CBT. But yeah, it was rapid, absolutely rapid. But his mates were all on R1s, which were a lot quicker.
I like I do like speed, but I prefer like classic bikes because they're just far more comfortable and like better looking than super bikes. And
Like
super
speed-
bikes,
speed
like you can't
triples
really
and
ride
things.
them for long journeys. They hurt your balls. Like you're
Yeah, but-
hunched over. It's like a really uncomfortable riding position.
I don't know, man. If you're going to be on a bike, the only real point is so that you can absolutely rag a Ferrari, innit?
Yeah, but a Bonneville is a really quick bike.
Yeah, but you know, it's probably pretty quick. It's probably 4 or 5 seconds to 60 still, though, isn't it? Whereas
Yeah,
on an R1 or something, it's a second and you're at 60. 1 second later.
Yeah, but the thing is, yeah, like when I get a Ninja, I'm just gonna have it for like just like fun rides and that, like little short ride. But you can't do journeys in those bikes. You know what I mean?
I don't know. My brother used to razz around on his Ninja all over the place. He'd go up and down the country with his mates, but he would moan like you're moaning about his balls because it's painful on a sports bike when you're crouched right over it, right? It's not exactly the most comfortable position. It's not like you're on a Harley.
Yeah, like classic bikes and Tourers are definitely the most comfortable. I don't know exactly what bike I'm gonna get, but I'm gonna get a few more bikes. Like I've got I got 2 Royal Enfields, but I could legally can't really ride them. So I sort of like it's a bit dodgy. Do you know what I mean?
There's got a
Riding
right
legally.
collection of decent bikes as well. They've got good taste.
Yeah, I've got more bikes in Pakistan, and in Pakistan you don't need a license.
Okay.
So you do, but the law doesn't really like it's not really enforced. So you do whatever you want. I got
Even if you wanted
I
to-
don't know
the
how many
test's
bikes.
dead
I've got
easy.
now.
I've seen it. The Pakistani bike test is dead easy. Just go
Yeah,
around in
I
a
think you got to do a figure of 8, and that's it.
yeah. It's easy.
But most people don't have a license though. You don't need one. Like if you get stopped by police and they ask you to produce a license, you just pay them off a little bit
Right.
and they just leave you alone. I've got guns in Pakistan and I don't have a license for any of them. I've got
Right.
like over 200 firearms.
But you're what?
None of them
Only
licensed.
you sound like you're first generation British or second generation British. Presumably your parents you came over and you were born here, right?
Yeah, my dad grew up in England and my mum was born in Pakistan and I was born here. Yeah, a lot of people they say I've got a white man's voice.
Yeah.
They
Well,
say- they say I sound very
you
white.
just sound British.
Yeah, but like like I don't have the Asian accent at all because all my friends are white. Like because I grew up in a white neighborhood, and like most of the people I've been around are like white, so I just talk like them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I grew up in Birmingham, so I grew up in totally the opposite. I was in the white minority, so maybe 1% of the population where I was born and raised were white. The rest were all Muslim.
What about like was there a lot of Jamaicans at that time? That was in like
Yeah, they were
80s
in the
and
minority
90s, isn't
too.
it?
Chinese and Jamaicans and whites were all in the minority, so there's probably the same amount of black guys as there was white guys. Well, let's put it this way: in my class at school, and there was probably 13 years in the school I went into that was like first year of secondary school, was in a school in Birmingham called Moseley School, and in that year, the first year, there was 14 classes, I think, and all of them were Muslim, everyone. But there was 2 kids in that year that weren't, me, Nathan, and another kid who was also called Nathan, who was black. So it was me and him and that was it.
Black Nathan or White Nathan?
Black Nathan and White Nathan, and that was it. Everyone else was Muslim.
What was that experience like though? Would you say it was a positive one, or would you say like it was negative?
I ate better than everyone else around the country. I got the best food. So in my neck of the wood, the food was fantastic. It was all halal. It was all beautifully prepared, and it tasted fantastic. So I got a taste of really good food, like exotic foods from exotic places.
Yeah.
That's what we had in Birmingham. So out in the rest of the country, while everyone else is
Birmingham's
eating
still
crappy,
known for
boring
its food.
food, we got curry. It was wicked. I loved it.
Yeah, I've only been to one restaurant in Birmingham called Shabab's Kebabs.
Okay.
And, the hairy bikers went there. And one of my friends, he was going to Birmingham because he needed to pick something up, and he was like, "Yeah, let's go Shabab's Kebabs." I went there. It was pretty decent. It was nice.
Because there's so many of them, there's like a mile of curry shops all in one place.
So, like, do you ever talk politics on your show?
Nah, I deliberately tell people not to.
Why
So,
is that?
because it inevitably ends in people getting either racist or just aggressive for no reason. So, I'll give you an example, right? At the moment, we've got lots of people who are coming to England that aren't white. So, for
Yeah.
the parts of the country that are predominantly white, they might have a few blacks, Muslims, Indians, whatever. They're going to have a small proportion of that particular type of person. Now, when more come, suddenly they're going to tar that group with everybody that's in that religion. Basic racism, right? And it's really awkward when, especially myself, when I was raised with virtually no white friends, to say you're talking about Islam in a way that is just wrong and doesn't represent the majority of the people who are British and have that religion. So there's a difficulty for a lot of the white nationalists or whatever they are that are out rioting to distinguish between just more people and a certain amount of those more people will be bad versus tarring them with a race, a colour, or a creed, or religion. And it's like, I don't know, it just disheartens me that people are so dumb.
I think the problem is it's an intelligence issue because a lot of these people, like, I meet a lot of these, like, I call them EDL guys, or like, I wouldn't even really call them racist. They just don't know how to express themselves correctly. And a lot of them, they end up becoming like they end up agreeing with me on a lot of things because like they seem to think because we live in the same society, but just because uh, our religion or skin color is different, we don't have the same problems.
Right.
Like I'm totally against illegal immigration. I'll
Yeah, me too.
happily go to a protest that's protesting to stop illegal immigration, but that's not what they're doing. What they're doing is they're burning British businesses, they're attacking British citizens, and they're attacking anyone of color or of a religion different. I watched a church get burnt down, I think yesterday or the day before. And I'm like, you claim to be Christian, you're waving the St. George's flag, and the people who have bothered you, most of them are not Christian. Christians have nothing to do with it, and you're just attacking innocent Christians. So I think
Right.
it's a lot of it's just like it's an IQ problem.
Yeah. It's just people. It's like, if there's people who need to migrate illegally, they're going to. And if you find them, you deport them. But that's a government level issue that isn't being dealt with, and that's what the majority of them are moaning about. And if you pigeonhole it into what it is, that is illegal immigration, you're like, well, who's going to agree with it? It's illegal, therefore against the general, understood law of the land that people would, if they're British, want to have adhered to. Even if you don't necessarily agree to it, you kind of unilaterally agree that that's the law of the land and you'll adhere to it. Even the argument that some of the people who are coming should adapt to our culture, like maybe they're not capable initially of adapting to our culture. And again, I think back to when I was growing up as a kid, and there was people fresh off the boat, and they couldn't speak English. Now, can I expect them to immediately go to a Christian church and start speaking the Queen's English and buying bleeding potatoes and Yorkshire? But no, you've got to take a certain amount of time to acclimatise if you're in a completely new country. But people think, oh, well, no, they must adhere to our ways. And you're like, how? How do they even know what our ways are? They've just got here.
Yeah, and these people, they're like a lot of them. They just hate the idea of immigration completely. But then when
Right.
you look at their lives, they drink beer which came from somewhere in the Central Europe, and then they like tea, which came from India. They
Right.
like a curry or a Chinese, which comes from Asia, and they probably drive a foreign car, and they like using the train, and they like getting a taxi, and all of these things didn't really exist in our country to the point where they do now before there was any form of immigration.
Right.
But it just doesn't make like they don't make sense. A lot of these people, and I think the problem is, a lot of these white people, they live in communities where they just talk to white people and all of their friends are white, and they don't actually speak to Asians or Muslims and realize like they have the same problems as us.
Exactly. On that level, that's how I can, although I don't typically talk about it on my show on YouTube, that's how I can associate it to the show. So in the field I deal with, everybody's entitled to their belief. If you want to believe you're on a spinning water ball flying through a sky vacuum, more power to you. That's up to you. The problem is that there's plenty of people who don't like the idea that someone doesn't believe as they believe, and they'll fight them tooth and nail because they don't believe as they believe, and that's when it becomes a massive problem. It's like, you need to just live and let live. And for me, it's irritating, especially because you try and educate people in terms of where their religious background with heliocentrism came from, and they'll brace against it. They'll be like, no, that can't be right. You're like, it is what it is. That's how it's measured. But if you want to attack me as a result of me just telling you how it is, then that's kind of sad. You shouldn't really feel so threatened because somebody's educated you to a higher standard. And it's the same with religion. It's like, well, do you actually know what Islam is? I almost guarantee the majority of the British flag waving hooligans that are out on the street throwing Molotov cocktails and chucking bits of rock at police, they have no idea about any of these religions. They don't know what the people really stand for. They know what the media has told them they stand for, and that's about it. And they'll read the headlines, decide on their opinion based on that, and then go forward and riot. Sad.
Yeah, I just think they're just not the smartest of people. So
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know any of them. Like I say, I've seen the TikTok videos. I probably know as much as the next man, but
and a lot of them have been manipulated into this sort of race war. Like they've sort of been like baited. Like there's been like public figures who've stood up for some of their issues, and now when because no one's standing up for these guys, these people who believe they're getting invaded, and then as soon as someone stands up for them, they sort of just believe everything they say. Like that incident that happened in Southport, the kid who the 17-year-old boy, he was born in Cardiff, and he was a Christian, and his parents were from Rwanda. I can't hear you.
do you know that's true? Have you done your primary source research on it?
Well, he's got a Christian name,
No, but I mean,
and
have you checked that the story you've got is true? I don't
yeah,
know.
I have. Yeah.
I don't know either way.
Well, I didn't know initially. I was just getting told it was a Muslim immigrant, and then I did a little search on the kid's name. Turns out he's a British citizen, and he's got a Christian name.
Right. I see what you're saying now. You're saying the media originally presented it as though it was a Muslim immigrant, but
Yeah.
after a bit of research, it seems like it was a Christian English guy.
Okay, well, Welsh. Well, he was Welsh born anyway.
That might not be true either. You
But
just don't know.
he was in a what do you call it? He was in like this BBC advert years ago, and he spoke
Okay.
perfect English. And I think for someone to come, if he was an immigrant, I think it's unlikely that he was an immigrant because he spoke very good English at such a young age.
Right. Now, don't get me wrong.
So
If the guy's been tracked down, I don't know about this subject, but if the guy's been tracked down and he's some curly-haired English guy with a ginger scalp, then yeah, there's a good chance he's not a foreign immigrant.
no, he's a black kid, but his parents came over Rwanda, but he was
Okay.
born in Cardiff.
Right. He's like you. He's like second, third generation or whatever.
Yeah, and he's got no like affiliation to a mosque,
Right.
and
Some
it
guy.
makes 0 sense. Yeah, it's some random guy, and these guys have just been influenced by him killing two girls to burn a mosque and attack a church and attack Muslims.
So you're saying that they've utilised this as a way of inciting racial hatred?
Yeah,
Wow.
but
Outrageous.
I think there's a reason for all of this, though. I don't think this was an attack on brown people. or Muslims. I think this was an attack on everyone because I think what they're using this situation to do is what they're trying to achieve with this situation is an attack on freedom. Like they're arresting people because of things they say on Twitter now. That wasn't happening before. And I think it's just they're trying to implement facial recognition in public, and they're trying to slaughter freedom of speech online.
That's another thing that they've spun though. So this idea that you couldn't be arrested in the UK for stuff that you said on Twitter, and now it's started happening, that's garbage. It's always been that way. If you actually look at the statistics over the last few years for who and how many people are actually arrested in the UK for misuse of Data Communications Acts and things like that, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of them that get prosecuted each year in the UK. So malicious communication, threatening behaviour, things like that, fairly common here. You know, we're quite strict, but there's this now idea that as a result of what's happening with rioting, there's now prosecutions on Twitter, and you're like, nothing's changed, as far as I'm aware.
I think it's going to become far more common than it was before. Because
It already
before
is.
you could
That's
get
what I'm
away
saying.
with
It already
saying
is.
things.
There's already plenty of people being arrested for that crime.
But from my experience, I'm a very controversial sort of person. I've said the craziest shit on the internet, and I've never had a visit from the police because of it.
Well, so far, fortunately for me, you've not said anything. So I'm going to live and leave you because you can check out the channel and you'll see yourself on it. So I'll publish this chat.
Nathan, is the whole conversation going to be on there?
Yeah, you can check it out. You've got the channel name already.
Nathan, it was lovely talking to you. It was an
You
interesting
too, man.
conversation.
How'd you
I'll
say your name
definitely check
again?
your channel out. What'd you say?
How'd you say your name again?
Hamza.
Hamza. It was really nice chatting to you.
Hamza is with a H. Humza.
Hamza.
Yeah.
Hamza, it was lovely talking to you.
Have a good one, Nathan.
Take it easy.
Bye.